The rain, a relentless curtain against the city's glow, mirrored the unsettled feeling blooming in Elara's chest. Apartment 7. It had been her grandmother's sanctuary, now hers. A haven of worn books and whispered stories, a place where the echoes of the past clung to the floral wallpaper like morning mist. But tonight, the past took on a tangible form, a crisp, cream-colored envelope lying innocently on the faded welcome mat. "For you," the elegant script declared, an invitation, a promise, or perhaps a question mark etched onto her solitary world. She carried it inside, the paper cool against her trembling fingers. The apartment, usually a comforting embrace, now felt like a stage, bathed in the muted light of a single lamp. The air, thick with the scent of old paper and lavender, held its breath, waiting. With a hesitant grace, she broke the seal. Inside, words cascaded across the page, an outpouring of affection, admiration, a secret longing painted with the delicate strokes of a master artist. They spoke of her smile, a sunrise on a cloudy day, of her quiet strength, a willow bending but never breaking in the storm. These were not the clumsy affections of a teenage admirer. These were the words of someone who saw her, truly saw her, in a way she hadn't even seen herself. But who? Confusion tangled with a nascent excitement, a fragile hope fluttering like a trapped bird. She had told no one she lived here. Her parents knew, of course, but they were preoccupied with their own fractured lives, their own separate orbits. Noah, her steadfast, pragmatic best friend, knew, but he wouldn't orchestrate such a romantic gesture. He'd sooner offer a well-reasoned argument about the statistical improbability of soulmates than pen a love letter. The apartment complex itself, a faded tapestry of brick and wrought iron, suddenly transformed into a gallery of suspects. The elderly woman with the mischievous eyes who always seemed to be tending her window box. The gruff but kind superintendent with his endless stories. The struggling musician who practiced his saxophone at all hours of the night. Each became a potential candidate, a phantom figure lurking just beyond her perception. Sleep offered no escape, only a restless swirl of fragmented images, the elegant script on the envelope, the intimate details of the letter, the faces of her neighbors blurred and indistinct. She awoke to the gray light of dawn, the rain still falling, the city still shrouded in mist. The first thing she did was check the floor outside her door. Another envelope lay there, identical to the first. Another promise, another whispered secret waiting to be unfurled. The game had begun, and Elara, heart pounding with a mixture of trepidation and reckless abandon, was ready to play, even if she didn't yet know the rules, or the stakes, or the player behind the curtain. But what if the love wasn't meant for her at all? The rain outside apartment 7 had ceased, leaving a city washed clean, shimmering under the fragile autumn sun, but the storm within Elara only gathered force. The letter, now smooth and reread a dozen times, lay open on the worn, velvet surface of her grandmother's writing desk. It had become a daily ritual, this clandestine delivery. A whisper of perfumed paper slipped beneath the door. Each message a breadcrumb on a path she couldn't quite see. Her apartment, a sanctuary brimming with the ghosts of stories past, felt both larger and smaller now. The towering bookshelves, once silent witnesses to her solitude, seemed to lean in, as if holding their breath, waiting alongside her. This space, inherited and steeped in the aroma of aged paper and forgotten dreams, was meant to be a fresh start, a place to escape the wreckage of her parents' fractured world. But the letters? They were rewriting the narrative, adding a chapter she hadn't known she was yearning to read. Noah, her anchor, her confidant since childhood, couldn't grasp the allure. He saw the letters as a prank, an unwelcome intrusion into her carefully constructed world. His pragmatism was a shield against the romanticism that flowed through Elara's veins like ink. "Someone's messing with you, Elara," he'd warned, his brow furrowed with concern. "Just ignore them." But how could she ignore a phantom hand reaching out, offering a connection so achingly longed for? Her days became a dance of quiet observation. The residents of the apartment complex, once mere background characters in her life, now possessed a newfound intrigue. Old Mrs. Abernathy, with her mischievous twinkle and endless supply of gossip. Mr. Peterson, the reclusive artist whose canvases hinted at hidden depths. Even the gruff building superintendent, Mr. Grumbly, with his surprising green thumb and a gaze that held a flicker of something unreadable. Each became a potential suspect, a phantom in her ever-growing gallery of possibilities. The letters spoke of shared moments, stolen glances across crowded cafes, whispered conversations under the starlit sky, a dance in the rain, moments Elara hadn't lived, experiences that existed only in the realm of fantasy. Yet the details were so vivid, so intimately rendered, they felt like half-forgotten memories, echoes of a life she desperately wanted to claim. She found herself drawn to the places mentioned in the letters. The local cinema, a relic of a bygone era, where flickering images danced on the silver screen, filling the air with a sense of shared enchantment. The rooftop garden, a hidden oasis where the city lights twinkled like fallen stars. She walked these paths, retracing invisible footsteps, searching for a sign, a clue, anything that could bridge the gap between the words on the page and the reality of her existence. Each letter revealed a little more, a fragment of a memory, a glimpse into the writer's soul. They spoke of her grandmother, of her love for old films, and a peculiar habit of leaving a single, perfect rose on the fire escape, a small detail Elara had never shared with anyone. This intimate knowledge sent shivers down her spine. It felt like the writer wasn't just watching her, but knowing her, seeing her in a way she barely understood herself. One passage in particular haunted her waking hours. It spoke of a robin that visited her windowsill each morning, a creature the writer claimed was a messenger of love, a symbol of hope. Elara had noticed the robin, a flash of red against the gray cityscape, but she dismissed it as a mere coincidence. Now, the words transformed the bird into something more, a tangible link to the unknown writer, a feathered spy delivering secrets on the morning breeze. The longing for connection, for understanding, for love intensified with each passing day. Elara felt like she was standing on the edge of a precipice, poised to leap into the unknown, propelled by the promise of something extraordinary. But beneath the excitement, a seed of fear began to sprout. What if the writer wasn't who she imagined? What if the letters were a cruel joke, a carefully crafted illusion designed to break her heart? What if, in her desperate search for love, she was walking blindly into danger? The apartment, once a refuge, now felt like a stage, every corner holding a secret, every shadow concealing a potential answer. The letters had awakened something within her, a yearning for a life beyond the pages of her books, a life filled with the kind of love that poets wrote about and dreamers chased. But with that awakening came a vulnerability, an awareness of her own isolation that threatened to consume her. She found herself lingering longer at the window, watching the city awaken, searching for a sign, a clue, a glimpse of the elusive writer. The robin returned each morning, its bright eyes gleaming with an unsettling intelligence. Was it a messenger or merely a bird? Was she being led towards a great love or a devastating truth? The answers, she knew, were hidden somewhere within the labyrinth of the apartment complex, waiting to be discovered. And as she held the latest letter close to her heart, a chilling realization dawned. The writer knew far more than she could ever imagine. A thrill, sharp and unsettling, began to bloom within her, a fragile flower pushing through the hard soil of confusion. Each letter was a breadcrumb, a shimmering fragment of someone's soul offered in secret. It was a dangerous game she was now playing, a dance on the precipice of obsession. The familiar scent of old paper and ink had become intoxicating, a heady perfume that lured her deeper into the labyrinth. Days dissolved into a blur of furtive glances and whispered theories. The neighbors, once simply background figures in the symphony of the apartment complex, were now suspects, their every gesture magnified, scrutinized, reinterpreted. Old Mrs. Gable, with her twinkling eyes and a garden overflowing with wilting roses, became a master of disguise in Elara's mind. The taciturn Mr. Abernathy, always shrouded in shadow, suddenly possessed a hidden romantic streak. Even the perpetually cheerful delivery boy seemed to harbor secrets behind his practiced smile. Noah, ever the grounding force, tried to rein her in, his brow furrowed with concern. He saw the way the letters were consuming her, the way her eyes held a feverish glint. He warned her of the dangers of projecting fantasies onto strangers, of building castles on foundations of sand. But his words were like pebbles against a rising tide. Elara was too far gone, swept away by the current of the unknown. The letters, they were evolving. What began as gentle admiration now possessed a sharper edge, a knowing familiarity that both thrilled and unnerved. The writer spoke of her grandmother with a tender reverence, recalling shared moments and whispered secrets that only a true confidant could know. The old movies that flickered across the screen at the Bijou Cinema, their silver light illuminating forgotten dreams, were now woven into the narrative, their plots mirroring the unfolding drama of Elara's life. And then there was the rooftop. The writer described a shared memory of a summer night, the city sprawled beneath them like a glittering tapestry, the air thick with the scent of rain and possibility. Elara had been on that rooftop countless times, lost in her own solitary thoughts, never realizing that someone else had been watching, their heart beating in time with hers. The hunt intensified. Elara found herself drawn to the rooftop again and again, searching for clues, for any trace of the elusive writer. She ran her fingers along the weathered brick, tracing the invisible lines of their shared history. The wind carried whispers through the air, secrets carried on its breath, just beyond her grasp. The stakes were rising, the tension tightening like a coil. With each revelation, Elara felt herself getting closer to the truth, but also more exposed, more vulnerable. She noticed glances, lingering stares from the other residents, a sense of being watched, of being a player in a game she didn't fully understand. The comfortable anonymity of the apartment complex was dissolving, replaced by a sense of unease, of lurking shadows and unspoken intentions. Then came the letter that shattered the fragile illusion, the one that sent a chill snaking down her spine, colder than the autumn wind. The writer mentioned the robin, the small, red-breasted bird that visited her windowsill each morning, its cheerful song a fragile melody in the urban landscape. She had never told anyone about the robin, never. It was her own small secret, a connection to the natural world in the heart of the city. How could they know? Was it a coincidence, a lucky guess, or was someone watching her? Not from afar, but from within the very walls of her life. someone who knew her better than she knew herself? The line between reality and fantasy blurred, the edges of her world dissolving into a swirling vortex of doubt and fear. The letters, once a source of excitement and intrigue, now felt like a violation, a trespass on the sacred ground of her soul. The robin continued to visit her windowsill each morning, its song now a haunting reminder of the unseen presence that permeated her life. And as she stared into its bright, knowing eyes, she wondered what other secrets were hidden within the walls of apartment 7, what other truths were waiting to be unearthed. The game had changed. It wasn't just about finding a secret admirer anymore. Now, it was about protecting herself from something far more insidious. The chilling realization settled in. This wasn't a love story. It was a game. And she was the pawn.
Hope, a fragile butterfly, had fluttered into her chest, only to have its wings clipped by the most gentle of hands. Mr. Henderson's eyes, wise and kind behind their spectacles, held no trace of the ardent admirer who poured his soul onto parchment. He was a guardian of stories, not a weaver of clandestine romances. Elara felt the blush drain from her cheeks, leaving behind a cold, echoing emptiness. The bookshop, usually a haven of comforting scents and hushed whispers, now seemed to mock her with its knowing silence. Each towering shelf, each leather-bound volume stood as a testament to tales she was not destined to star in. His words, though delivered with the utmost care, were like stones sinking into the still waters of her imagination. A misguided attempt at connection. Was that all it was? Some awkward soul, lost in the labyrinth of their own making, reaching out through anonymous missives, too afraid to show their face? The thought stung, not with anger, but with a profound sense of disappointment. She had envisioned a grand romance, a story worthy of the novels that lined her shelves. Instead, the reality was perhaps a pale imitation, a shadow play of yearning and unspoken desires. Back in the familiar confines of apartment 7, the unopened letter lay on the floor like a discarded invitation. She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the crisp paper. Each word, each carefully crafted phrase now seemed tainted by doubt. What truth could it possibly hold now, knowing it came not from a secret admirer, but perhaps a lonely stranger? She tore it open. The familiar script swam before her eyes, the elegant curves and flourishes now seeming less romantic, more desperate. The words spoke of observing her from afar, of admiring her quiet strength and her unwavering love for stories. They described the way she smiled when lost in a book, the way she hummed along to the old records she played, the way she tended to the small herb garden on her windowsill. A wave of unease washed over her. This wasn't just a casual observation. This was intimate. The writer knew details they shouldn't know, details that chilled her to the bone. It wasn't a declaration of love. It felt like surveillance. The robin that visited her windowsill each morning, a detail she had never spoken aloud, was mentioned again. A shiver ran down her spine, prickling her skin. The apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage. She glanced at the window, half expecting to see a shadowy figure lurking in the courtyard. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside sounded like approaching footsteps. The comforting silence of her grandmother's apartment had been replaced by a cacophony of imagined threats. This wasn't a love story. This was something else entirely. Something darker. Something unsettling. Mr. Henderson's words echoed in her mind, a misguided attempt at connection. But what if it wasn't misguided? What if it was something more calculated, more deliberate? What if the letters weren't meant to woo her, but to watch her? The thought sent a surge of adrenaline through her veins, jolting her out of her disappointment and into a state of heightened alert. She was no longer a lovelorn dreamer. She was an investigator, and the game had just changed. She scanned the room, searching for clues, for anything she might have missed. Her eyes landed on her grandmother's old typewriter, tucked away in the corner. It was a relic of a bygone era, a heavy, clunky machine that had been silent for years. A film of dust coated its keys, a testament to its long dormancy. But something was different. A glint of light reflected off the polished surface, drawing her closer. And there, nestled between the keys, was a half-finished letter. The handwriting was unmistakable. The same elegant script that haunted her dreams, the same precise strokes that had filled her heart with longing and now filled it with dread. The letter began with a salutation, and then her name. It was a message addressed directly to her, filled with words of love, words of longing, words that spoke of her grandmother. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. A wave of nausea washed over her. Her grandmother. But how? Why? The questions swirled in her mind, a chaotic vortex of confusion and disbelief. The unfinished letter offered no answers, only more questions. Why would her grandmother write these letters? Why keep them hidden? And why now? A terrible premonition settled in her stomach. This wasn't the end of the mystery. It was only the beginning. And the truth, she suspected, was far more complicated and far more painful than she could have ever imagined. The scent of old paper and ink filled the air, a ghostly perfume of secrets waiting to be unearthed. But what if the love she had been searching for had been there all along, locked away in the past, waiting for her to discover it? Or perhaps waiting to warn her? She hunted for answers, a phantom lover in a maze of brick and whispered secrets. Each letter a breadcrumb trail leading her deeper into the puzzle of her own heart. She sought a grand confession, a dramatic unveiling beneath the city lights. But the city held its breath, the answer hidden not in the shadows, but in the sunlit dust motes dancing above her grandmother's forgotten things. It began with the typewriter, a relic of a bygone era, a hulking machine of steel and ink, sitting dormant beneath a faded cloth. It had always been there, a silent sentinel in the corner of the room, a forgotten piece of furniture. But today, something called to her, a whisper in the quiet apartment, a pull as magnetic as the moon tugging at the tides. She lifted the cloth, the scent of old paper and forgotten dreams rising in the air. Beneath her fingertips, the cool, smooth keys beckoned. And then she saw it. A sheet of paper, half hidden beneath the roller, caught her eye. A letter. The words blurred at first, her breath catching in her throat, her heart hammering against her ribs. She pulled it free, her hands trembled. The handwriting was unmistakable, the same elegant script that had filled her days with longing, the same careful loops and graceful curves that had woven a tapestry of whispered affections. But this was different. This letter was unfinished, a thought suspended in time. Her eyes raced across the page, devouring each word, each stroke of the pen. The letter spoke of love, a deep, abiding love that transcended time and space. It spoke of watching her grow, of admiring her strength, of cherishing her spirit. And then, her name, Elara. The world tilted on its axis. The floorboards seemed to sway beneath her feet. Her own name nestled within those familiar words, a seed planted long ago, now blooming in the harsh light of revelation. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and the room spun. A montage of memories flooded her mind, like a broken dam unleashing a torrent of images. Her grandmother's warm smile, the comforting scent of her perfume, the gentle stories whispered before bedtime. Her grandmother. The realization crashed over her, a tidal wave of grief and understanding. It wasn't a secret admirer. It wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. It was her grandmother. The letters, the robin at the window, the shared love of old movies, they weren't clues to a present mystery, but echoes of a past love, memories resurrected, a posthumous embrace reaching across the veil of time. Her grandmother had written those letters years ago, long before Elara had even arrived at the apartment. She had penned them in secret, pouring her heart onto the page, crafting a message of love and guidance that would transcend her own mortality. She saw it then, with a clarity that pierced the fog of her confusion. The letters weren't meant to spark a new romance. They were meant to rekindle an old one. A love that had been dormant, waiting for the right moment to bloom anew. They were always there, hidden carefully within the apartment, nestled amongst her grandmother's treasures, waiting for Elara to find them, to decipher their meaning, to understand the depth of the love that had always surrounded her. The apartment wasn't just a collection of rooms, it was a vessel of love. Each letter was a whisper from the past, a gentle reminder that she was not alone, that she was cherished, that she was loved. The quest for a secret admirer had been a detour, a winding path leading her back to the one love that had been constant, unwavering, eternal, a love that bloomed in the quiet corners of her heart, nurtured by the memories of a woman who had known her better than she knew herself. Her grandmother had orchestrated the silent symphony of love, a masterpiece of posthumous affection designed to guide her through the trials and tribulations of life, to remind her of her own strength and resilience. The love letters were a compass, pointing her towards a truth she had always known, but had somehow forgotten in the chaos of her young life. A truth that whispered of family, of connection, of the enduring power of love that transcends even death. But why had she never mentioned it? Why hide them so carefully, leaving her to stumble upon them as if by chance? What other secrets lay dormant within these walls, waiting to be unearthed? And what was the purpose of this carefully orchestrated revelation, delivered from beyond the grave? The answers, she knew, lay hidden within the remaining words of that unfinished letter, a message from beyond, a whisper from the past, waiting to be heard. The robin still came each morning, a feathered messenger unaware its purpose had shifted, its secret revealed. Elara watched it now, not with the feverish hope of a new romance unfolding, but with a quiet ache of understanding. The letters weren't a prelude to something new, but an echo of something old, something profound that had been woven into the very fabric of her life. A tapestry of love, spun not in the fleeting threads of infatuation, but in the enduring yarn of family. The realization crashed over her in waves. Sadness, a deep and resonant sadness for the lost years she hadn't known this love existed, this unwavering devotion poured out an elegant script. But beneath the sadness, a warmth began to bloom, a tender affection for the woman who had seen her, known her, loved her enough to leave behind a trail of breadcrumbs leading back to her heart. Noah, ever the anchor, stood beside her, his presence a steady counterpoint to the swirling vortex of her emotions. He couldn't fully grasp the intricate dance of grief and gratitude playing out within her, but he understood enough. He saw the tremor in her hands, the unshed tears clinging to her lashes. He knew the letters were more than just words on paper. It's like she knew you'd need them," he said softly, his voice a low rumble against the backdrop of the city's hum. "Like she created her own way to talk to you, even when she couldn't be here."
And that was it, wasn't it? Not a ghost story, not a mistaken identity, but a lifeline thrown across time, a whispered conversation between generations. Her grandmother, a woman she remembered only in fragments, had become a vibrant, breathing presence again, her voice resonating in every carefully chosen word, every heartfelt sentiment. They walked then, not with the frantic energy of a detective on the hunt, but with the quiet reverence of pilgrims tracing sacred ground. They revisited the places mentioned in the letters, the faded grandeur of the old cinema where her grandmother had first fallen in love with the magic of movies, the sun-drenched park where she had once sat, sketching the intricate patterns of the leaves. Elara saw it all now, not through her own eyes, but through the lens of her grandmother's memories. The cinema wasn't just a building, it was a portal to a shared passion. The park wasn't just a green space, it was a canvas upon which her grandmother had painted her own unique perspective. Each location became a tangible connection, a bridge spanning the years, drawing her closer to the woman who had shaped her life in ways she was only now beginning to understand. She had been so focused on finding a new love, on filling the void left by her parents' absence, that she had overlooked the love that had always been there, waiting patiently to be rediscovered, a love that didn't demand grand gestures or passionate declarations, but whispered in the rustling leaves, danced in the flickering light of the projector, and resonated in the ink-stained words of a handwritten letter.
The quest for something new had led her back to something old, something infinitely more precious. The apartment, once a symbol of isolation, now felt like a sanctuary, a repository of memories, a testament to the enduring power of love. The setting sun cast long shadows across the room, painting the walls in hues of gold and amber. Elara sat by the window, the letters spread out before her like a map, each one a carefully plotted point guiding her towards a deeper understanding of herself, of her family, of the intricate tapestry of love that connected them all. She traced the loops and swirls of her grandmother's handwriting, feeling the echo of her touch, the weight of her unspoken words. The letters weren't just messages, they were a legacy, a gift, a promise that even in absence, love could endure, could transcend time and space, could find its way to the heart that needed it most. But within the comfort, a question lingered, a subtle disquiet that refused to be silenced. If these letters were a carefully crafted message for her, why had her grandmother kept them hidden for so long?
She climbed to the rooftop, the city sprawling beneath her like a vast, twinkling constellation. Each light a life, each life a story, and hers now illuminated by the past, reaching for the future. The wind carried the scent of autumn leaves and distant rain, a familiar perfume that whispered secrets only she could understand. There, amidst the concrete and steel, she felt closer to the woman who had filled these rooms with love, even in absence. A letter of her own began to take shape beneath her pen. Ink bled onto paper, forming words of gratitude, of understanding, of love returned. It was a response decades overdue, a conversation spanning time and space, a message carried on the wings of memory. She thanked her grandmother for the letters, for the unexpected adventure they had sparked, for the realization that love wasn't always a thunderclap, but a gentle, persistent rain. Love, she now understood, wasn't confined to grand pronouncements or sweeping gestures. It resided in the small details, in the shared moments unnoticed by the world, in the quiet acts of devotion that echoed through generations. It was in the worn pages of a favorite book, in the scent of lavender on a forgotten handkerchief, in the robin that visited her windowsill each dawn. The robin, a creature of habit, a messenger of the morning. It waited patiently on the sill, its bright eyes reflecting the city lights. It had witnessed her solitude, her confusion, her relentless search. It had been a silent observer, a living embodiment of the quiet presence that had always surrounded her.
She carefully folded her letter, a tangible piece of her heart pressed between the pages of a well-loved novel, a novel she intended to donate to Mr. Henderson's shop, a gesture of thanks, a silent acknowledgement of his unwitting role in her journey. Perhaps someone else would find solace within those pages, another soul touched by the echo of a love story waiting to be discovered. The city hummed beneath her, a constant thrum of life and possibility, but she no longer felt lost in its vastness. She was anchored, grounded by the roots that stretched deep into the past. The letters had not delivered a new love, but they had revealed the enduring power of the one she already possessed. A faint smile touched her lips, a smile of peace, of acceptance, of newfound understanding. It wasn't the triumphant grin of a mystery solved, but the soft, knowing smile of a heart finally at rest. She was no longer searching for something missing. She was cherishing something found. The robin chirped softly, a gentle reminder of the present moment, of the sun slowly beginning its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, of the life that stretched before her, filled with untold possibilities. As the light faded, casting long shadows across the rooftop, she carried the book downstairs. The air in the apartment felt different, lighter, somehow cleansed. The echoes of her grandmother's laughter seemed to dance in the corners of the room. It was no longer just an apartment, it was a sanctuary. She placed the book by the door, ready for her trip to Mr. Henderson's shop tomorrow. The robin outside sang one last melody before sleep, a lullaby, a farewell. But even as peace settled upon her, a tiny seed of doubt began to sprout, a whisper in the back of her mind. If her grandmother had written the letters, how had she known about the robin, about the specific robin that visited her windowsill each morning? A detail she had shared with no one, a detail her grandmother couldn't possibly have known. The question lingered, a subtle discord in the harmony she had so carefully constructed, a reminder that some mysteries, like love itself, are not easily solved, that sometimes the answers we find only lead to more questions.